Everyone talks a big game, such as, yeah, I think we should change X, Y, Z. But then when it actually comes down to it, they don't do anything about it. Walking towards me, and he's bringing over like 4 girls with him. He's like, Max, I just want to introduce you to your biggest fan. And she legitimately is a huge fan of the podcast.
Sarah and Max, an unlikely pair in this wild podcast. They're the perfect flair. Sarah's charm, so feminine and free. A Cali girl spirit under the podcast tree. Max, a strong force with a punch in every word. Together, they navigate this dating absurd. Don't forget to hit subscribe, join the crew for more laughs and tales just for you. Now back to the show.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Good for Shidduchim. I'm your host, Sarah Levine. I have my co-host with me, Max Landisman. And today we're obviously going to get into another topic that has to do with Shidduchim. Before we get there, we just wanted to remind everybody to like us, subscribe to us, anywhere you listen to your podcasts. Please give us a 5-star review. Also follow us on Instagram. We're at Good for Shidduchim. And if you wanted to leave us any thoughts, feelings, please email us at goodforshidduchim@gmail.com. We also have merch. The link is in the description box. So if you guys want to look at any of our really awesome merch, just open up the description box and the link should be there.
And I do want to make a shout out to a friend of ours. I won't mention her name because she probably won't like it that I will mention her name on here.
Don't mention her name.
But you know who you are. She just spent $92 on merch, and we really appreciate it. And it really does, yeah. I mean, it really does help us out because we take that money and, like, for example, the software that we're using right here, it's called StreamYard. So we pay for that, and then there's another thing called Clap we pay for. So between those two is like $40 or $50 a month. And I can't remember, but I'm sure a couple other miscellaneous things that we pay for. So that's really where the money's going.
Yeah, no, we don't make any profit for ourselves at all on this. It's literally just, honestly, it's for fun. It's for fun, you guys. It's, I mean, listen, hey, maybe one day we'll be able to break even, but right now it's literally
right now the goal
all the money's
is really
going
just
right into the
back
podcast.
into the podcast. So maybe one day we can make money, but as of right now, yeah, exactly as Sarah said, it's really just kind of just paying for stuff that we use, the software, that kind of thing. And so we really appreciate it. You know who you are. So thank you for that.
Yes. Yeah. Awesome. Okay, Max, you want to take it away?
Yeah. So I have to, I know we're going to be talking about, everyone talks a big game such as, yeah, I think we should change X, Y, Z. But then when it actually comes down to it, they don't do anything about it. But before we get into that, I wanted to, you won't believe this, but apparently we have fans, Sarah, we have fans.
I know, it's so crazy.
It's crazy. It's surreal, honestly. It's also kind of funny. But yeah, I was in Long Branch this week, taking it easy a little. And I was in the front of after davening, after Kiddush, I was waiting in the front of the shul for someone. And then someone I know was walking towards me. He's about my age. And he's bringing over like 4 girls with him. And he's like, Max, I just want to introduce you to your biggest fan. And so I never met her before, but it was this guy's sister. And she legitimately is a huge fan of the podcast. Like, literally listens to every single show we have. So number one, we really appreciate it. You know who you are. And what's funny, I asked her, how did you come across us? And she actually came across us through a search on Spotify itself. I forget if she was looking for a Jewish podcast or whatever. I think she saw Living L'Chaim podcast or whatever. And then the first suggestion after that one was us. And so she started listening from there, and she loved it ever since. So we really appreciate it. We spoke for about an hour or so afterwards, going over things we've said on the podcast, things she agreed with, things she didn't agree with. One thing she actually mentioned was, which I was actually kind of surprised by it. She's like, I emailed you guys like 2 weeks ago and you guys never responded. I know you guys talk about how you should email. I'm like 100%. I'm really kind of taken aback. Like, I did think, not to throw you under the bus, even though it sounds like it, but I'm like, in my head, I'm like, Sarah actually checks the email. So I told her, I'm like, listen, right after Shabbos, I'm definitely going to respond to that email. So right after Shabbos, I go into the emails and I'm just like, I don't see any email from her.
No, maybe she
I don't
sent
see
it
any
to
email.
a wrong one. I
She
don't
probably
know.
she might have sent it to the wrong one. So I know you listen to the podcast. You know who you are. You may think that I still haven't responded to the email, and I apologize, but I do ask that you send us another email, and please double check the actual email address that you're sending it to. Good for Shidduchim.
Because we get excited. We don't like if we see an email, we get excited. We want to open it. We want to hear what people have to
100%.
say. So
Definitely. I think what she did was, when I originally said good for Shidduchim, like GODFOR SHHHHHHH IDDU CHIM. I think she probably put in like the full Shidduchim extension.
Oh my gosh.
Maybe. So we do ask that you just if you send us another email, we definitely will get back to you for sure.
Yeah, for sure. We
love
the emails.
We love the fan emails. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I checked spam. I checked everywhere. It just wasn't there. So, yeah, you should know that. And yeah, please email us again. So we can get into it.
Yeah. It's exciting that we have fans. It's exciting that you were approached. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. And that goes for anyone. If anyone sees me in person, feel free to approach. I like to think I'm a nice guy, and I'll definitely talk to you.
Yeah.
Especially about Shidduchim. Anything about Shidduchim I like talking about. It's my favorite subject.
Okay, Max, you want to get into what we're going to talk about this episode?
Yeah, I wanted to get into it. Actually, I think it was actually part of that conversation I had over Shabbos that kind of got me thinking about, what we're going to be talking about today, which is just because something is the norm doesn't mean you still have to follow through with it. So one of the things we were talking about is, when, like, I was mentioning, like, even if you go through reference calls and this and that, and you ask people who this, let's say they're looking into a guy, you try to get the background of the guy, where he went to school, blah, 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 all the bull crap. And you could still, unfortunately, I did bring up, I'm like, unfortunately, the people that shouldn't be getting married still end up getting married, even after all the stupid reference calls and after finding out all this information. At the end of the day, he could still, oh, I forgot to bring you back on. My bad.
That's okay.
Okay, we're back on. By the way, if you're wondering why Sarah wasn't on before, Sarah, when she reads the intro, she doesn't like to be on the camera for whatever reason.
It's like I can't do it when I'm looking at, I don't know. It's really weird.
Whatever. It's good for Shidduchim. I think it's better for Shidduchim if you're on the camera, though. So, anyways, to continue what I was saying. So, even if you look into all these things, this guy is still able to kind of hide things. And unfortunately, these people get married. And then only when it's too late do you find out all, like, things that, would have been nice to know beforehand. And so it's definitely a fact that the more you get to know someone over a longer period of time, things just come out. Right. And so, she was mentioning how, but that's just like not the norm. Like, in the Yeshiva Shavelt, you date for what, 3 weeks, a month, whatever, maybe 2 months, something like that. But like, you just get married right away. And so my point being was, I'm like, but you don't have to do that. You don't have to get married after 3 weeks. And so she kept kind of pushing, saying, but that's not the norm. And I think this is why I wanted to talk about this today, is because, everyone kind of wants change, but no one's actually changing. Meaning you can control your own life. Just because it's the norm and just because people say this is what you should do doesn't mean you actually have to do that, or doesn't mean that you don't have the power to go against the grain. Because I think that's the whole point of why we do this podcast, is to kind of call things out for what they are and essentially live the way you want to live, not to be forced into things that you don't want to be forced to, and especially marriage, because marriage is a very, very serious thing. When you get married, I certainly hope this is people's intentions, but when you get married, that is a person you're going to be with forever. Right.
Right.
Yeah. So like the fact that you can only like go out with them for 3 weeks and like feel like you have to marry them after that is absurd in my head. The way is absurd. And so just because it's the norm doesn't mean you actually have to go through with it. I don't know. What do you think, Sarah?
Right. No, I definitely agree. I think like on her perspective, it's more of like she's saying it's the norm in terms of like her parents are, that's like what her parents are expecting her to do, and like that's what her friends are doing. So for her to do what's out of the norm is it's like it's putting her kind of in like a vulnerable area, in a vulnerable space, I guess, or she may not feel confident enough to be out of the norm herself, which is kind of, it's kind of sad because you should be in a position where you feel in control of your dating life and in control of um what's going on within within the dates, and I feel like it is kind of taken away in some Jewish communities in terms of how you date and what is quote unquote the norm. When somebody like this is like, I don't feel comfortable after 5 dates making a decision if we need to get engaged or if we need to break up. Like, but because it's the norm and like I don't want to go out, what happens if I go out a sixth time and then a seventh time and then I don't know and I'm not so sure? It's like all this pressure is put on a timeline, and then um and then this person is just left like either buckling and saying, okay, fine, let's just continue, let's just get married, or they break up too soon. So it's honestly only harming themselves when it comes down to it, which is really sad because I'm sure it happens all the time. So I think I was talking to you about the example of, this can also happen when a shadchan is involved, right? You have the shadchan involved for X amount of dates. Like depending on your circles, the shadchan can be dropped after 3 dates. Sometimes it's 5 dates, or sometimes it's the whole time. And I feel like some girls, they want to drop the shadchan, after the second date because they feel like they can maximize the communication a lot better. Or I hear sometimes this has happened like on the fourth date, they've been using the shadchan as a go between, and the communication has just not been good. Like somebody's missing something at like some point, and it either deters the date or it makes
Meaning like the shotgun is not relaying information that she wanted
yeah,
relayed or something, or
there's nothing better than face-to-face communication with the person you want to communicate with. When you
okay.
have a third party in between, you have like a telephone conversation happening, I'm sure they don't do it on purpose. But sometimes, I mean, like when you're having a conversation with someone and they're like, oh, you mean this, and this? And they're like, no, I mean that, like I mean something else. It could
So
just
like
happen that you just don't know, that
for
you're not
example,
exactly understanding, but the shadchan just relays that message being like, "Oh, I think I know what she meant when about that date."
could you give an example of what you mean?
So, I was talking to a girl about this. She had a shadchan, I think it was like their third date, and she had asked the shadchan, it was about hashkafa. And the shadchan had said something to her about the guy in terms of hashkafa. And it was very like on the border of what she wanted. I can't remember the exact detail, but she was like, oh, that's interesting. It doesn't seem like that's his type. I thought like we were more on the same type of hashkafa. This is kind of going on a different route. Like I thought he was XYZ, and now she's telling me he's ABC. And so before the date, she was thinking like, "Oh man, like maybe I'm going to break up with him like after this date. Like I'm not so sure like how his hashkafa is. I thought he was one
Me-
one thing, now he's
Meaning like,
not."
sorry to cut you off. Meaning like she saw his resume or whatever and thought and spoke to references and thought
No,
like,
that she was on the 3rd date with him.
oh, third date. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah. And
And
so and
she
so
was
when she
reading a
gets
certain hashkafa, and then the shotgun's like, I don't know where you got that from. Like this is the hashkafa
No,
that
she didn't say that. She said she wanted to clarify something about hashkafa with the shadchan, and it was the 3rd date. And the shadchan said, "Oh, he's like this." And she was confused because she was like, well, I went out with him and I thought it was something different.
Right.
So
Okay.
when she's going out on the 4th date, she's like already thinking like, what type of hashkaf is he? Oh, I thought he was like this, and like maybe I have to break up or maybe whatever. And so then when she's talking to this guy, she brings it up and he's like, "No, that's not at all what I meant. I meant like this and this." Like the shachan like got it wrong. So I think that like that could have been prevented obviously by speaking directly
Right.
and clarifying directly before the 4th date. And I'm sure that there have been things that are like a lot like that have come up that are like a lot more serious than like this one hashkafa aspect. And I think that like if you feel that you need to have better communication and that the shadchan isn't communicating well, or you're nervous that the shadchan isn't communicating well, drop the shadchan. Who cares what date it is? Just tell them. Just say, I feel more comfortable actually talking to this guy one-on-one, or I feel comfortable, you know, talking to him directly after a date or whatever. But if he doesn't feel that way, then then you have to think about it. But I think like you don't there's like there's these rules of
Well, this is what we do, so this is how it's
right,
gonna be.
the shadchan, right, exactly. Like this is what the shadchan does, so this is just like how it's going to be. Okay, but what happens if it's not good? What happens if like what happens if I want to change it? What happens if
Right.
I don't like it?
Right.
And I think a lot of people need to say like, well, I don't like it, so I'm going to change it.
Like,
And honestly, the more people that do that, the less weird it looks, or the less like stereotyped it looks. I
exactly.
don't think there's anything wrong with being like, well, I do want to change this part of dating. I don't think like dating for 2 weeks and then getting engaged. I feel like I may want to change it to a month, or I want to change it to 6 weeks. I'm not saying everybody has to do that, but to the
It
individuals out there that are struggling with the quote unquote of this is just how it is, they should be able to feel empowered to change it, because I don't think it just is how it is.
100%. And the ultimate thing that we're trying to bring out here is that you do what you want to do, not being forced by somebody else to do. You do what you want to do. So if for example, like the first couple I ever set up with Moshe and Lonnie, like I thought once I set them up, my job was done. Like that's honest to God, I thought my job was done. I'm such a
Yeah.
modern, that's the modern side of me. I'm like, okay, great. And she's like, no, I need you to be the shotgun. I'm like, screw that. I'm being a shotgun.
Right, but
Um,
she wanted that. She
she
knew
wanted that.
she
Right.
knew.
She wanted me to be the go in between, to be the in between, and that's totally cool. But as long as it's coming from her, right? As you said, if you have another girl who is not into going through a shotgun, and she also thinks that the shotgun is not doing a great job with the communication part, also, and she just wants to go just speak to the guy one on one, I do think that she should speak up and say, I would really appreciate if I could just talk to him one on one. But what happens if a shotgun's like, oh, that's not what we do, honey. I'm sorry, honey, that's not how we do things here. Whatever it is. What would you say to that?
Right.
I'm just curious.
If a shadchan told me that's just not how I work,
Honey.
honey, I would say, okay, well then I guess I'm not utilizing your services.
It was great meeting you.
It was
Yeah.
great to meet you. I don't know.
Because like I think the biggest challenge is that not everyone is so outgoing and not everyone is so like likes to be up against the grain. So for those people, I could definitely see it being a little bit more challenging. But I do think that's one of the biggest points why we have a podcast, is so that like-minded people can kind of hear what's going on and say like, oh well, I felt like, I'm not even kidding. A friend that lives in the Upper West Side heard everything I had to say about the Upper West Side. He actually, when he saw me in person, he's like, I really appreciate that. I thought it was just me.
Oh.
So this is kind of the idea of the podcast where people can kind of come together and realize like it's not just them. Like, don't think
Yeah.
you're such an alien and you're like, well, I don't want to just date for 2 weeks. Maybe I want to date for longer, you
Right.
know? But everyone's telling me I'm weird, so that must mean I'm weird. No, it doesn't mean you're weird.
Right.
Um,
I mean, we're telling you that it's not weird.
yeah,
Like other people may be telling you it's weird, but we're telling you it's not weird. To
yes,
to feel empowered and take control of like your dating life and
it's
how
your
you want to
life.
date.
I
It's your
it's
life.
unbelievable.
It's also your decision, you know.
It's
So,
unbelievable how small they make this decision out to be when it's actually one of the biggest decisions of your life. Your spouse is what other decision are you going to make that's bigger than this? I can't think of anything.
what? Probably buying a house.
No, I think buying a house is way less than
Oh, you
picking a
think
spouse,
so?
than marrying a spouse. Because I think marrying a spouse, I don't know, they
Uh,
talk about how, when I say they, I'm using this loosely, but I did remember overhearing this in yeshiva, where Haman would not actually have been as bad as he was if it weren't for his wife. His wife was actually the worst, and
Mm,
she kind of pushed Haman to do what he did. It could
mhm.
have been that without her, he actually may not have done what he did. It may not have
Uh,
been so against Mordecai. The point is
mhm.
that I think picking a spouse and marrying a spouse is going to affect every other decision you have in the rest of your life, basically, also, because they play a big part in that.
Right. I
And
will
so that,
say, oh
yeah,
yeah,
go ahead.
sorry.
So I was just saying, I'm like, to push someone to think after 2 or 3 weeks, like, this is the person you're going to marry, right? And if you don't do it within this time frame, then you're weird, is absolutely insane.
I mean, listen, we're we obviously think it's insane, but it like people are comfortable with that type of dating, which is
But that,
fine. And
but
like,
that's what we're saying. Meaning, if you are the one who wants to do it, there's no problem with that. You do what's good for you. We're
right,
referring to people that don't want to do it and feel forced to do it,
right,
and
yes,
they know
exactly.
deep down that this is not what they want to do. So we're talking about those cases. Not
Right,
anyone wants to get married after a day, go for it, but it has to come from you.
right, exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Right, right. No, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree that you really have to. I mean, finding a spouse is very important, and I feel like sometimes people downplay how important it is.
They always
Um,
downplay it,
to
and then they
finding a spouse, like,
and then
kind of
they
like it's
yeah.
not that it's not important, but, like, they downplay what it is to find in a partner and, like, "Oh, that will come later," like, "Oh, like, that doesn't need to happen now," and they like, a lot of people that you could get some, advice from, they just kinda dismiss a lot of, like, maybe issues or they dismiss, like, some hesitancies. I feel like that happens a lot too, but, like, I don't know how I feel about that too, you know what I mean?
It's always great. It's always very easy to tell someone what to do when you don't have any skin in the game. It's always the easiest. The second you have skin in the game, things change.
Right. No, that's true. It's like they have nothing to lose,
They have nothing
but
to
the other
lose.
person has
It's
everything
everything
to
to
lose.
lose. That's right.
Right, but they don't feel that way because they're
Of
like,
course they
"Okay,
don't.
well, this is how things are done or this is how things are thought out," and, like, that's it.
Right. Who says? Right. Who says?
Right,
Yeah.
but if you have that gut feeling, then go with your gut like, this circumstance. Like, if you aren't feeling right about something or you wanna say something, um if you wanna say something either to the shadchan or to your parents, or if you wanna be like, "I wanna do something a little more different," go for it. Um, because like you said, this is your decision, this is your life. Nobody else is making this decision for you. It should be coming from you.
Exactly. I actually think it's a massive bracha that if you feel, let's say, if things are being pushed in one direction, but for whatever reason you feel like this inner feeling and your gut feeling is telling you otherwise, then what do you call that? I actually call it a bracha. I actually think like some underlying message is telling you that something about this doesn't feel right. And I'm not
Right.
saying you have to necessarily act on it, but I would definitely suggest looking into it more. And if your gut is
Right.
telling you something is off, a lot of the times it actually is right.
No,
And
for
to
sure.
think like
And
oh, it's a gut feeling, so they're like, oh no, it's just nerves or something, but you'll be fine. Like, says who? Says someone without anything in it, says someone without skin in the game.
right. Right, exactly. And they're just told to brush it off. I was gonna also say that a lot of girls are there's like a lot of rules about what to wear on dates.
For real.
And I feel like this kind of goes into the same category on like you can wear whatever you want to wear, be comfortable,
I always thought
like
that anyways.
what?
What is the rule that I
There's
think
like
it's also a rule for guys. I mean, I don't know if you call it a rule, they highly suggest it.
yeah, it's like the first date you wear heels no matter where you're going. Um and you always like obviously like kind of like fancy clothes. First date doesn't really matter where you're going. You know what I mean?
I get that. I mean, I try to put my best foot forward, especially on the first date. I dress a little nicer.
Yeah, but I mean, you don't have to wear heels. If you want to wear heels, you can totally wear heels. But like,
I don't
if your gut feeling
well,
is
yeah,
telling you, I do not want to wear heels, do not wear heels. It's
yeah,
okay.
no
You
one's
will
ever
still
asked me
get married.
no one's ever asked me to wear heels. I don't know what that's
Oh,
like. I didn't realize they actually
you
push
never had to
that.
wear heels on your first date?
Never.
Max. Oh my
Shocker, right?
gosh. Yeah.
You
How'd you
think
get
like,
away
oh,
with that
why?
one?
Because I was in Miami, you thought I had to wear heels too?
You wouldn't be the
Well, it's
only girl
because they don't have
walking around Miami
they,
with
they
heels.
don't well, I have, I have wider feet, so I guess they didn't have the do they have wide heels as well? I guess that's why I didn't
Oh,
wear wide heels.
yeah.
They have wide heels?
They have
So,
they have heels for all shapes and sizes,
yeah.
Max.
Oh, sometimes, a guy looking at a girl in heels, and if it looks like it's painstakingly killing them, it actually like when I see that, it hurts me. I'm like, please just wear regular shoes.
Yeah.
Um,
Wasn't there somebody who told us that they went on a date, wearing high heels and they went boating?
no, they went hiking.
Oh, they went hiking.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
not gonna say the name. She probably doesn't want me to mention it, but
Whatever. I don't even know who it is, to be honest with you. I
I'll
just
tell you
know
after.
that
I'll tell you after.
it's
It's
fine.
one of the it's one of the funniest stories ever. She's
But I'm just saying, like, if you feel like you don't have to wear high heels, don't wear high heels, especially when it's
right,
not safe.
right. I also do think like if someone, for example, someone set me up with someone was actually in Miami. I went, he highly recommended I dress like in a suit, whatever. Even though like I was kind of like, wow, this is a little bit I actually did do it and I was happy I did, but you know, you still should have the power to do whatever you want. If you want to show up in a polo shirt, go for it. That's on you. Meaning, if someone, I think people, someone wants to suggest something and just kind of lay it out, it's like, here's why I think you should do this. First impressions are everything. If they see you in a polo shirt, they may not take you as seriously as you'd like. That's fine. You could say that. And I do think first impressions are a thing. And I do like to dress up a little bit more for a first date. But at the end of the
Right.
day, if someone is so against it, then go for it. Then just do whatever you want. Who cares?
Right.
It's still up to you.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. But that's also I just brought like heels in as like just another example of like what's technically like the norm, so to speak. And like that's definitely a norm is like wearing heels on dates or on even on the first especially on the first date. And like even that, like who's controlling you and telling you what you have to wear? Take control of what you feel is necessary. It doesn't, if you feel that you feel like fancy without heels, go for it. Like, don't, don't feel that other people have to dictate anything for you. Just be who you are. And I feel like the rest will just like fall into place. And like you said, like you definitely should be the first person to be the change. If you want something to change, then you have to start and you have to be the change.
100%. And even for all those people who may find it hard to do, if you just do it once, it gets easier from there. Like it's going to take somebody to actually say like, no, I'm not going to do that because I I'm not going to get married after 3 weeks. I'm sorry, screw you. And if you want to date longer, and if they have a problem with that, then if they have a problem with that, then you're going to have a major problem later on anyways. Right?
Exactly. It's like right, if you're scared about the other party and like what they think, like you really it could be a blessing, like you said, if they're like, "Oh, but we have to get married at 3 weeks. I don't understand blah blah blah." Then that should be kind of like a aha moment, like, okay, well, if they're not respectful of how I'm feeling about things, then like how are they going to be respectful like further down the line?
Right. And as I said, and I kind of was pointing to this before, but if you're a complete douchebag and real like bad guy, it is not that hard to hide who you really are in 3 weeks or a month or a few months, whatever it is. The
Right.
longer it does take, the easier it does get. But I think if let's say go out for 4 months or longer, whatever it is, people will disagree with me. I'm a big fan of like probably going out for at least 6 months a year. I know people are like very against it. I know you're probably very against it as well. It's too
I'm
long.
not I'm not
Whatever.
against honestly, I'm not
But
against anything. If you feel that that's
right. The
your
way I
comfort zone,
view
then
it is
you go ahead.
the way I view it is that this is a very serious decision. Once you getting engaged and you get married, once you get married, like that's it, you're in, right? And so what are the pros and cons? The cons of getting married too early is that you're now married and you didn't realize that this other person's a complete douche and you didn't want to marry them. I don't know. You're like, I don't know why they know this before.
Right.
And what's the con about waiting? So you wait a little bit longer. Congratulations. And the pro is that you feel a lot more confident in your decision and you get to learn about the person a little bit more. So I see like, I think that if I do pros and cons for everything, business wise, everything wise, and it's always
Yeah.
kind of worked out that way. And
Yeah.
I think that's the best way to go about it. But yeah, you're going to have to be the change. You can't just talk about, well, I think this should be different. It's not going to be different until you decide it's going to be different.
For sure. Exactly. No, I definitely agree. And hopefully people start um feeling our support and feeling supported in their decisions and are able to kind of break away from feeling that they're stuck or that they have to be, whatever the community thinks is normal.
Right. From my own personal experience, that once you take something seriously, other people around you will take it seriously as well. Meaning, if you're like wishy washy about something, like people feel that they can kind of push on something on you because they feel that there's a chance that they can do that. But once someone is so like, this is how I'm going to do things, they kind of back off because they kind of respect you now.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, totally. I think it makes sense. But again, it's not easy. We're not saying this is easy.
No, it's not
We
easy.
know that this is very
Cha-
difficult. We know it's very hard.
To change anything is always difficult, but the point is that it does get easier.
Yeah, I mean, once you start, you feel so good about it, but it does take a very long time to
Right.
get there, but hopefully there's like small baby steps first,
Right.
Small baby steps first.
I wasn't born coming out saying go screw yourself and I'm going to
Are you
do it my way.
sure?
I wasn't born that way. No, for
Are
sure.
you sure?
100%. 100%.
Were you
100%. I
talking
worked my way up to
finance?
that.
Were you talking
Finance.
finance with your dad or politics?
We never talk finance. We talk about stock. Oh, was I talking
Oh,
about
no,
stocks when I
you
came out
guys,
of
oh my gosh. That's what you guys
Stockholm?
talk about.
We talk about stocks.
Finances
Yeah.
and politics.
Politics. Oh, that's a joke, whatever. Anyways, what else is there to talk about, right?
Yeah.
Shidduchim. We throw a
Shidduchim.
lot of shidduchim in between. But yeah. Anyways, I hope this helps people. I hope this kind of opens up, possibilities for yourself that you kind of take charge of your own life. Because I think that's the real message here. Do
Yeah,
what you want to do, not what other people tell you to do.
for sure.
Shidduchim.
Yeah. Sounds good to me.
All right.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for listening. We hope that we, could help some people out. Please email us, goodforshidduchim@gmail.com. And that is just regular shidduchim.
That's right. And if
um,
you like the podcast, feel free to leave us a like. We really appreciate it. It helps us out as well. And
yes, exactly.
and check out our merch store. The link is down below in the description.
Yeah. All right, guys, until next time. Bye.
And remember, everything will always be about shidduchim. Catch you in the next episode.